My name is Gabe, and I feel kind of weird about this one. I recently had the honor of reading The Minders by John Mars. And there were parts I really loved, parts I utterly despised, and parts I felt were just Well, to begin, here's a summary. In the near future, in order to prevent them from being stolen, all of the UK government's secrets are placed inside several civilians who must protect them with their life. As always, here's my opinion straight up without any elaboration. My experience with this book was negative. Well, there were amazing parts in this book. Both the parts I didn't enjoy and the way they connected the story together brought the story as a whole down for me. So I cannot recommend this book. From here on out, I'll be spoiling the book, so if you do want to read this, bow out now. To start, this book is told as 5 different stories of varying quality. Sinad, Bruno, Charlie, Flitch, and Amelia. All of these stories, save for Amelia, are barely interconnected, and I do mean barely. Despite all having these secrets in their brains, they don't interact with any of the same people, and each of their stories have varying quality. So I'm going to review them separately before talking about them as a whole. Sinad's story starts with her being awakened to the fact that she was in an abusive marriage, and her husband was controlling what she ate, wore, listened to, and read. A friend manages to finally, after years, show her how bad it was. Once she realizes, when she does, she quickly makes friends with another woman who she believes is also in an abusive marriage, and is hurt when she can't seem to help her the same way she was helped. And even more so to then discover that she was wrong. And that's where Sinad's story connects to the rest, so we'll stop this summary here. Okay, so this, in my opinion, is the best storyline in the entire book. Sinad feels fairly real and is going through a problem that is, unfortunately, fairly common. Yet her story is for the most part empowering. It's a story about someone getting out of that situation. Something we all, to a degree, wish we could do, even if our problems aren't as serious as an abusive marriage. Now, on to Bruno. Bruno is the father of an autistic child, and his wife cheated on him, and ended up in a car crash with the man she was cheating on him with. Bruno was sued by the wife of the guy his wife was with, and was therefore put into a situation where he could no longer afford to take care of his son. So he put his son into a long-term care facility, which is problematic in of itself, but I am neither qualified or confident in my ability to really just dissect this particular issue. After entering the program, Bruno immediately becomes a serial killer, killing everyone involved in the lawsuit, until he meets the wife of the guy his wife was cheating on him with, and discovers that she has a wheelchair-bound daughter. Apparently, feeling sympathy because they both have disabled children, Bruno chooses right then and there to stop being a serial killer. And that's where Bruno's story rejoins the rest. So, as before, I'm going to stop the summary here. The big problem here is lack of characterization. Once he joins the program, we rejoin him having basically finished his murder spree. So it's hard to understand exactly why he's doing this or how bad the people he's killing are. Heck, we don't even really hear talk about the lawsuit until after the murder spree is done. So it's hard to feel bad for Bruno. And the lack of characterization just makes Bruno's actions, both the murder spree itself and stopping the murder spree, like it comes out of nowhere. When we meet Charlie, he's spending time at a bar waiting for his dead friends. No, really, that's how he's introduced. Charlie's story consists of him entering the program to get a new start, only to realize all of his emotions have vanished. He gets all the friends he could ever want when before he had none, but he feels nothing for them. He even gets a girlfriend, but again, he feels nothing. He eventually has to kill his supposed best friend to keep a secret, but again, feels not a single thing. He eventually gets a match on this book's ever-present and pointless dating app, which I'll be talking about in more detail later on in this video. And suddenly, all of his emotions come back. That's when this story you know the drill by now. Charlie's story is okay. It's kind of a monkey's paw story. He wanted friends, now he has them in spades, but he can't feel a thing for them. At the very least, I like the idea, but I can't say the same about the execution. While Charlie spends a lot of time on his lack of emotions, the fact is, and that goes for most stories in this book, this is a story that would have better suited in its own space and its own book, where it didn't have to compete for page time with 4 other stories. And as an aside, as someone who is deeply invested in mental health, it always upsets me when mental health issues can be cured or resolved with one simple action. Flick. While Bruno and Charlie's stories I felt meh about, and I loved Synad's, Flick's infuriated me. No, enraged me. Ultimately, it pissed me off. Flick is a recluse. After discovering that her match on that aforementioned and still to be talked about dating app was a serial killer. Naturally, she joins the program to better herself and start talking to people again. She moves to her new town and immediately starts to work in a bar. She has a much better life. So far, so good. She meets Elijah, an artist. You know he's important since I bothered to remember his name. Which, by the way, I never do. Well, Elijah immediately starts to flirt with Flick and ask Flick out. Flick says no, and he says he'll change her mind. Which, while not an exact quote, anything along those lines is bad enough. He comes off as an ass. No better way to say it. But he, in this book of evil serial killers, awful governments, ambiguously evil hacking organizations, is the worst character in the book. Yet he's treated like the guy Flick should and does end up with. You might be saying, okay, yeah, he said the thing, but that doesn't make him that bad. So let's continue. So Flick and Elijah start their relationship. And one of the first things Flick tells Elijah is not to paint her or take her picture. It is worth noting that as part of the program for the government that she's a part of, she's supposed to keep a low profile and stay out of the public eye where possible. All the while, Elijah is talking about his brand new art exhibits. Before that exhibit opens, Flick eventually gets pregnant. Before she tells him, and after she discovers that he also paints serial killer victim corpse portraits, which is already disturbing in of itself, but hey, at least he gives the money to the families. She eventually goes to this new exhibit, of which she was never once hinted at and told of the contents, and discovers that it is all holograms, paintings, and statues of her. Not someone in her likeness, her. Elijah is treated as Flick's love interest. This is this book's will they or won't they. And it firmly lands on will they. And I cannot forgive that. Not at all. When I read this scene and found out they actually end up together, every ounce of goodwill I had for this book, which I did garner quite a bit of it up to this point, vanished. This is why at the top of this video I said, I can't recommend this book. This is why I said I felt angry. I wrote a whole script for this, but I think I can say it better in my own words. So I'm going to. As someone whose passion is putting myself out there in the internet, If you want to put me in your blog, paint me, and put me on the internet or whatever, I'm A-okay with it. Go ahead. And I guess you can use this video as evidence that I did in fact give you permission to do that. However, I'm not everybody. And I am acutely aware of that. And that's why this whole thing pisses me off. It would be one thing if Elijah never knew, if Flick never told Elijah, and Elijah just did it without thinking. Still a bad thing, but an honest mistake that if he had apologized for, I could see myself forgiving. However, that's not what happened. Flick told him, at the very beginning, before they even started dating, that wasn't a thing she wanted. That she absolutely did not want her pictures out there, or her likeness out there, or anything of the sort. Yet Elijah, even knowing that, still ignored Flick's wishes. Literally. Which, in the world of anything, is the lowest of the low. Look, there are people in my life who have absolutely agreed to appear in videos. I've even put some of them in videos already. But there are others who've said they absolutely have no interest. And for those people, what I just said is all you're ever going to hear of them. Because that's their wish. It doesn't matter the reason. Because in this case, it was more that she wasn't allowed to, not she didn't want to. But it doesn't matter. Elijah didn't know that. It's kind of a major plot point of this book, in fact. She could have had any reason. Something like a trauma, or self-confidence issues. Or maybe just doesn't like putting herself out there. It doesn't matter. When someone says no, you respect that. But not only does Elijah never do that despite being treated as a good guy by the book, never even comes close to apologizing. Like I said, this part of the book pissed me off. He assumed that once she saw it, she'll change her mind. A message to people in real life out there. If you feel to be in a relationship, whether romantic or platonic with somebody, they must be willing to be able to put themselves in the public's eyes. Don't force it on people. End that relationship. I think that requirement is stupid in my opinion, but whatever. Anyways, after that, Flick rejoins everyone else in Amelia's story where the main plot happens. Amelia wakes up with amnesia and discovers her supposed husband is lying to her about exactly that. And she's hired by the evil hacking organization, that's not even an inch off from their actual name, which set off the plot to kill her supposed husband and the other protagonists. Her husband is killed, and then she sends a fake recall message to the other protagonists. All of them realize it's fake, except for Sinad, where after taking the baby, she arrives at the safe house where she is interrogated by Amelia and killed by the evil hacking organization. Then, after Bruno vowed to stop being a serial killer, he encounters Amelia and is killed by the hacking organization. Noticing a pattern, Charlie finds out that Amelia was his match after she hacked the dating app, and he is, surprise, surprise, killed by the hacking organization. Amelia eventually kills all of Flick's friends and takes Elijah hostage. Fortunately, Elijah survives. When Flick goes to confront Amelia hallucinates her supposed dead husband, who as it turns out was her husband, no supposed needed. And all those people the hacking organization killed, she killed them. Well, the hacking organization of ambiguously nebulous evil does exist. They were only involved with this story in the first chapter. Everything after that was Amelia's hallucinations. Discovering how wrong she was, Amelia killed herself. Flick goes into hiding, and when it's safe for her to come out of hiding, she plans to raise her child with Elijah. When Amelia's story started, I was actually fairly invested. But as will become a running theme with the rest of this review, when it reconnected with the rest of the book, it became boring. So let's review the main story, shall we? Well, there's a lot to go over. The first and foremost is agency, or rather a lack thereof. Flick is our lucky survivor, and I do mean lucky. Despite it being established that everyone in the program had extreme combat training, Flick included, you'd expect there to be a fight at the final chapter. At the very least. But as soon as Amelia encounters Flick, she has her little moment and shoots herself. No fight needed. Which means outside of Amelia, no protagonist contributed to the main story at all. It makes reading all 4 stories feel kind of pointless. Also, another negative aspect of this book is its insistence on being sci-fi or set in the future. The story as is doesn't need those elements, and it's just kind of off-putting. Let's start with that dating app. It's apparently a DNA matching app which allows someone to discover their soulmate. The one person they are DNA destined to be together with. And according to everything in this book, this is not a scam, this is how it actually works. Look, that is a hugely problematic concept to not be the focus of your story. And nothing it does in this story couldn't have been accomplished by a regular dating app. In fact, it would have made more sense with a regular dating app. Sounds to me like it would be easier to hack any Tinder than it would be to hack government DNA database. And the main concept itself takes the story down so many notches. Number one, it makes the UK government look shady and nebulous when they're really not a focus in this story. It's also unnecessary and a horrible program in of itself, which, hold that thought, might make for a better video on its own in the future. And see, think about it. If only there was a government program in which you are forced to relocate and change your identity and keep off of the media because some evil types might want you dead. Too bad no such wait a second. Witness protection. That would have made this story make so much more sense. If maybe instead of a hacking organization we had some kind of mafia, or other form of organized crime, commit some kind of terrorist act and have our protagonists be witnesses to it. Everything else would make more sense from there. It would make sense that Charlie would have his emotions numb after witnessing a traumatic event. Especially when the explanation they have in the book otherwise is, oh, it's just a side effect that apparently only Charlie experiences. It would make sense to upturn someone's normal morals if they witness an event like that. And everything else also makes sense. It's not like any one story directly connects to the hacking organization or the program. They never even use any of that information. The closest we get is this exact line. Verbatim, every single time. Insert protagonist thought to themselves, if only insert person protagonist is talking to knew the truth about insert conversation topic. But insert protagonist could never tell them. It would destroy their whole worldview. I'm not even kidding. It's that conversation verbatim. Every single protagonist. There's also a moment where 2 protagonists meet, the only time they do in the book, and offhandedly reveal this pantheon's existence of gods that gets no mention or prominence in the story at all. So if the story isn't going to use any of this information for anything, why give it to them? The point being, this book is burdened by the need to be sci-fi when it only detracts from the story. A few miscellaneous points before we conclude today. I've come to believe the reason they made Sinad so likable and her story so endearing and inspiring and empowering is so we'd be pissed when they killed her first. I think that's the reason she's the likable character. To inspire anger. In which case, mission accomplished. Also, the UK government are awful in this book, and I don't think they're supposed to be. But aside from the experiment itself being cruel, here's their plan once their original recall plan fails. They're gonna mark the protagonists as terrorists, and somehow that'll help them recall the protagonists? As you can imagine, it doesn't work. It results in mobs coming after them, because, well, duh. That's it for today. I do hope you enjoyed this review. If you like this video, leave a like. If you want to see more like it, do subscribe. But more importantly than any of that, have a good night.